Our first topic is whether Trump has silenced his critics over Gaza. 0207 862 2222. Do call. Late last night, Israel's government approved the ceasefire deal put forward by Donald Trump. They basically had no choice anyway, giving Israel's military 24 hours to withdraw to an agreed line in Gaza, although there are reports that multiple explosions were seen over Gaza's skyline overnight. So it seems as if Israel might have done some late firing here. If the deal does go through and the peace holds, it would bring an end to a war that's been raging for 2 years. This is how Trump himself greeted the news.
We ended the war in Gaza and really, on a much bigger basis, created peace. And I think it's going to be a lasting peace, hopefully an everlasting peace.
Well, he always overstretches a bit, doesn't he, Reem? But it's big. It's certainly big.
It is huge. And look, barring whatever's going on domestically in the US, internationally, and to know that this is somehow going to solve the problem and sort of end that war in the short term at the very least is huge. I mean, we're not just talking about releasing of those hostages and releasing of the Palestinian prisoners, but we're also talking about allowing humanitarian aid into Gaza, allowing for infrastructure into Gaza, allowing for more resources into Gaza, which will help rebuild. So look, I really, really hope, for the sake of those people, it is a long-lasting peace. And, you know, Trump is the one that brokered the negotiation. It's the one thing he's been good for, is that, you know, he's a businessman. He always talks about, I need a deal. A deal is what he does. And, you know, he's been able to broker this deal in Egypt, which has been, I mean, let's just hope and pray that the hostages are released over the weekend.
Look at Gaza here, Andy. I mean,
It desperately
we've seen
needs
Trump did at some point tweet a film suggesting he could turn it into a resort. So that's
I'm not sure how helpful that was.
Well, it may not have been, but he's done something different here, hasn't he?
I share the sense of relief and hope that we're coming to the end of this. I think we've all been caught in this country and around the world in a sort of international panic attack because of this conflict. But I think it's smoke and mirrors for Donald Trump to be claiming responsibility for where we are now. Netanyahu has operated this war to his satisfaction at this point, and Hamas are at a point where they can't continue. They're about to be utterly obliterated, and that is why this peace treaty, I worry it's a pause treaty, not a peace treaty. That's why this peace treaty has happened today. Nothing to do with Donald Trump. I mean, in the sense that Donald Trump has carried on funding Netanyahu's war, that's why it's carried on for 2 years. It might not have done otherwise.
What I read was that there was quite a bit of leverage when Israel attacked the Hamas negotiators in Qatar, which drove Qatar bonkers. They also killed the son of the lead Hamas negotiator, which is kind of not what you do in a war if you want peace. And Netanyahu visited Trump in the White House, and Trump went ballistic about it and basically got Netanyahu to ring Qatar to apologise, which we know he did, and then subsequently had a lot of leverage to get Netanyahu to agree all of this. So, and you know, Andy's right, without America, Israel can't move.
Well, indeed. And also what it does say is, you know, we've got to have the conversation about political funding. I mean, Israel does fund a lot of Republican politicians' campaigns. So there are some aspects to this in which, you know, it's very unlikely that this is going to be a long-term peace. But I think what really, really matters here is, look, in Gaza, what you effectively have is a sort of an open-air prison where people are being starved to death. And I think that the fact that humanitarian aid can get in now, they're talking about 600 trucks increase a day, which is amazing. I mean, it will be able to save those people. And, you know, if Trump is the person that's going to allow this to happen, I think we kind of have to put politics aside.
The question is, what's the legacy of this war? I'm sorry, you know, you described this as an open-air prison. Of course, some people describe it as a war zone. And what we have is a population of people, particularly a very young population of people, who are going to grow up with vengeance in their hearts towards Israel. And so, peace treaty or pause treaty, I think it's the latter.
Let's see. All right, let's just go to a caller. Gary is in Dumfries. Hello, Gary.
Hi, Jeremy. How are you? You okay?
Well, I mean, do you say, to go back to Trump, do you say, look, this is basically Trump's achievement?
I think, Jeremy, there's absolutely zero chance of this deal being honoured for two obvious reasons. The two right-wing ministers in the cabinet, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, didn't resign. If there was any chance this deal actually coming to fruition, they'd have gone yesterday. And the second reason,
that's a very insidery point to make, but that is interesting. I was wondering why none of the people to the right of Netanyahu have popped up in the last 24 hours and said this deal's crazy. And I can't work out why, but because you think they've worked out it's going to fall apart, do you?
Yeah, I think they've been tipped the nod that this is pure theatre, and we're going to. The other reason that it won't happen is Netanyahu is probably the most duplicitous, dishonest politician in Israel. The general rule with Netanyahu is if he says something, the exact opposite is the truth. So they won't fulfil this. I'd bet my life savings on it that as soon as the hostages are released, they will find some excuse. They'll accuse Hamas of breaking the truce, and they'll be straight back in.
Interesting. Yeah, well, that is possible. I mean, they're going to have to withdraw. But the whole thing for Israel is a headache as well, because they've, let's say, killed 60,000, according to some estimates. You're going to, as Andy says, there's going to be just seething fury for decades across the border. It doesn't make for safe living, Gary.
I believe, actually, Jeremy, that, as Andy says, this is a lull in the fighting. They'll be straight back in and they'll complete the job. There'll be 2 million Palestinians either dead or exiled within the next few years. This is pure
2 million?
theatre.
What do you think?
I don't know, but the worry here is obviously that the people that live in Gaza have been radicalised. I mean, they've been told from birth, as Gary said, they've sort of been told from birth that they were, that Israel and also, the Jewish people are the reason why they're in the situation they're in. But what's interesting, I can't remember which paper it was in, but I did read somewhere in the papers today, there was a report that sort of looked, I think it was some of the journalism that's been allowed, that actually support for Hamas is pretty low in Gaza. And
Well,
actually,
not surprising, is it?
yeah, well, actually, a lot of people actually don't want, they don't want Hamas to have power.
You wouldn't necessarily be able to take action on that. If you're in Gaza, you speak
Support for
out against
Hamas
Hamas, you're gonna die.
support for Hamas is low, but hatred of Israel and
Is
the
high,
Jewish
yes.
people is high, and I think that's got to be the concern. The truth is, what's happened here, it's not a peace treaty, it's victory. Israel has won the war because Hamas have had to capitulate. They didn't want to give the hostages back. It was their only bargaining chip left. As soon as those hostages are back safely in Israel, alive and dead.
And so Israel
don't
say,
forget,
we won.
they'll
I'm
say,
not sure.
well, we've achieved our
sure.
aims.
Because you get a very dangerous peace, don't you? Because of all the threat from, Israel's neighbours and everything. And also threats to Jewish people around the world. Because in the 70s, we had attacks on people who were Jewish. You think of the Munich Olympics in 72. You think of that thing, the Achille Lauro, the cruise ship boarded by the PLO in the 80s.
A couple of weeks ago, the guy in the synagogue going into Manchester with a gun and a car and driving in. I mean, it is. I absolutely feel for the Jewish community, and I think it's disgusting that people, for some reason, you are expected to have an opinion or defend or indeed criticise the Israeli government when you have nothing to do with it. Just because you're a Brit, does that mean you agree with all of the actions of the British government? No, of course not.
Well, Angela Epstein, who we had on yesterday, who was in Israel, was saying actually 80% of Jews around the world do believe in the state of Israel, and therefore it isn't too much of a stretch.
Of Israel, but not the current state.
Not necessarily the actions of the current government.
I believe that the British government should exist. Does that mean I agree with absolutely everything the British government does now?
Fair point. OK, after the break, we're taking more of your calls on whether Trump has silenced his critics. Give us a call now with your thoughts. 020 7862 2222 is the number you need. Later, we'll debate whether we need to put, here we go, metal detectors in all schools to fight knife crime. Back to Donald Trump. Has he silenced his critics? 020 7862 2222. Israel's government has approved a ceasefire with Hamas as part of a big old peace plan. And I'm going to show you what the peace plan and the deal involves, because it puts the White House right at the centre of world affairs. You've got to say, this is what we're discussing. Credit to the man whose silhouette there is in the window for essentially putting America into things with such impact. So we'll look through one of these. Let's choose that window there. Sky News put together a great graphic, so our thanks to our friends in Sky News. This is the plan. De-radicalise Gaza, redevelop it, have the ceasefire, so that should be very, very soon. Release all the hostages, Palestinian prisoners released. Hamas disarmed, that's going to be a big one. Aid deliveries come in, aid distribution, then you have a new government, possibly involving Tony Blair, an economic plan for Gaza. You have a special economic zone to get money pouring in if they can. You don't have any Palestinians thrown out. You do have Hamas thrown out. You then have guarantees about the way it's run. You have what's called an international stabilization force. There's a guarantee from Israel it doesn't annex Gaza. You have a side plan if Hamas don't accept this, interfaith dialogue, Pathway to statehood is the long-term plan, and then Israeli-Palestinian dialogue. So there's an awful lot there, but you can see actually it's quite a lot of detail, and there's quite a long roadmap. And this is where we're starting. This map shows the destruction of the Gaza Strip in the last 2 years. Every single red dot is a building hit by a shell, missile, whatever. You can see 80% of it basically destroyed. Massive, massive amounts. Khan Yunis, big population centre. So only 14% of Gaza at the moment is free from militarised zones. So the pink areas here are areas that the Israeli army is in control of. A lot of people have evacuated to the white areas on the map. This shows the massive rebuilding operation that's going to be needed. And this is the map from the White House here, showing yellow line is the initial Israeli withdrawal, so pulling back almost in parallel across the whole Gaza Strip, and then going back into the state of Israel, where the black line is, eventually. So that's been put out by the White House. And as I say, our question today is about that man there, whether, in fact, you've got to give him credit for putting something extraordinary together, because this isn't the back of the envelope thing. This is actually looks like a proper peace plan that could, if we're lucky, get all the parties on a different road. Philip in East Yorkshire, do you give Trump the credit?
Not at all. He's a very smart guy. He knows what he's doing. As soon as he was elected, he could have stopped the war straight away. But he didn't. He waited and waited to see the whole place flattened. Now we've come to the Nobel Peace Prize. He wants to win it. It's about himself. It's about him.
When you say now we've come to the Nobel Peace, you mean that there's some sort of voting going on at the moment or something? Is that the thing?
Correct.
Is that, gosh, that would be quite, I mean, that is twisted if that's true, Andy, that he might have waited for them to be voting on the Nobel Peace Prize.
Twisted but true, yeah.
You think
can
so?
put that on
No, I
epitaph
don't
for
think
Trump. No, I mean, listen, he's an ego-driven man. He's an ego-driven man. Listen, when you're comparing these, has he ended the war in Gaza? I've already said, no, he hasn't. And the proof of that is he's tried to do the same thing with Putin and with Ukraine, and he hasn't been able to do that. You know, it's all about ego for him. It's all about theatre and performance.
But wait,
he wants to claim credit for something he hasn't done.
Eric Clapton has an ego. That's why he's a great guitarist. It doesn't really matter if Trump's a big head. The main thing is, has he given us a plan which is going to get us out of this nightmare?
Well, by definition, he has ended the war on Gaza. Whether or not this is a lasting end, whether or not it's a pause, that is a different situation.
And do you believe Andy's thing that it's because he's worked out when they're voting on the Nobel Peace Prize?
I don't think that's true. I think that's a load of nonsense, to be honest. I mean, look, if the war ends and it is a lasting peace, then Trump absolutely does deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. That is exactly what they exist for. I mean, the former president of Egypt, where I'm from, he received the Nobel Peace Prize. Indeed, Sadat.
He was assassinated then.
He was. He received the Nobel Peace Prize because of the Camp David Accord.
Hang on, Philip is still on. Philip, what about that?
Yeah.
They don't agree with you here.
It's all about him. He wants to win it, and that's why all this has happened. It's not about Gaza. Honestly, if it wasn't for this Nobel Peace Prize, Trump will have no interest at all in ending anything.
Well, I'll tell you one thing we can be certain of is if he doesn't get the Nobel Peace Prize, he will call for it to be shut down. There's no doubt about that at all. But that's
he does deserve it. If the war
maybe he
is
does.
lasting.
That really is the point.
That's complete nonsense. I must reiterate this. It's complete nonsense. If he'd have ended the war when Netanyahu wanted to carry it on, then maybe he would. He's just taking advantage of the fact that the war has ended. Israel's won. Netanyahu's got what he wants. Hamas is about to be destroyed.
David in Merseyside, hi.
Hello.
We're not quite giving Trump the credit here. Do you think we're wrong to hold back?
You're miles too early. Just all talk about the Nobel Prize is a load of rubbish. I mean, he's an egomaniac, to say the least, Trump, isn't he? It's all about Trump.
Yeah, but that, as I say, that doesn't... Look, Prince was an egomaniac. That's why he wrote great songs. It doesn't matter, David. We just want him to do a good job.
Well, I don't know how you compare that with Prince, but, I mean, you know... all they've done in this war with the Israelis and Hamas, all they've done is create a new generation of Hamas build. All these young kids now growing up.
I know. Well, that is the worry.
David,
that's the worry.
David, don't you think that the most important part of this is that fundamentally that he has he's ended the war and actually those people are going to be able to get humanitarian aid? Surely that's what's most important and his ego doesn't matter.
He hasn't ended the war. They're bombing Gaza this morning. They're still bombing Gaza this morning. He hasn't ended anything.
Yeah, no, I must say, I came into the office and the first thing I saw, BBC 7:14, was they're bombing Gaza this morning. So David's right. I don't quite. That just seems. What word do we use? Unsportsmanlike. It's
not in the spirit of a peace treaty, is it?
It really does seem wrong,
Aid
actually.
is going into Gaza, 600 trucks a day, and that, I think, is the most important thing. The children deserve to eat, they deserve to not starve to death in an open-air prison, and that is the priority.
OK, thank you, David. Nick in Devon, do you think that Trump has silenced his critics?
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I'm afraid not, no. I really do think that this is sort of the start of something rather than the finish of something. I mean, between Hamas, Netanyahu and also Trump, they've created a monster, I'm afraid. I mean, the Middle East is a powder keg at the best of times, and I'm afraid that, what's happened now in the future is not good for any of us, really. Revenge is a sort of horrible and nasty part of, if you like, the human sort of, the attributes that humanity have, and I'm afraid that's what they've done. They've created a new war, quite frankly.
All right. People ask that we're seeing Israelis praying here. Before that, it was very young Gazans celebrating, praising Trump, some of them. Obviously, the Israelis are waiting for the hostages to come back. Some will come back, sadly, dead. Thank you, Nick, very much indeed. Some of you think Trump deserves credit. Lee has reached out on Facebook. He says you've got to hand it to Trump. He's driven and he's led this deal. Elsa's been in touch on X, says Trump is the only leader trying to achieve peace, so good on him. The thing, in a way, maybe his short attention span and his ego helps us here, because he hasn't got... Do you remember when he was swearing, saying they've been fighting each other for so effing long, they don't know what the F they're doing? And you're thinking, his impatience trumps, he's just not got the bandwidth to do the details here. And that helps a bit. You get Netanyahu goes, he's not going to take any nonsense, you would think. Or are we giving him too much credit? We're taking more calls on this really important question, whether this is the day that you say Trump is not just an ego, he's not a buffoon here. He's done it. See you shortly. We'll be asking whether we need metal detectors in all schools to fight knife crime, and should we ban phones at the dinner table? That's a good selection of stories. But now we've got more calls on Trump and Gaza. I showed you the peace deal, thanks to that great graphic of that Sky News did. I mean, it's a hell of a thing. It's 20 points. It's not just two people in a room and bang their heads together. And by the way, I want to know if there's going to be any kind of signing thing. And how on earth has he even got Israel to do anything with Hamas? Anything. And I'm assuming that there's going to be a handshake.
Because they're facing immediate annihilation. That's why.
No, but Israel shaking hands, signing something with Hamas? Well, how has he done that?
Netanyahu was extremely unpopular domestically in Israel.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something we've got to remember.
And they've got to get the hostages out. That's
exactly.
True. Yeah.
And
also that Netanyahu
families
needs Trump. So maybe that. But you'll remember there was a moment in the 90s where Yasser Arafat shook hands with... it was the Israeli Prime Minister who was later assassinated. I want to say Sharon or Shamir, I can't remember which one, but he was, or maybe, no, Yitzhak Rabin. Okay, so Rabin, Arafat, shake hands. Amazing moment. Rabin then assassinated by a right-winger inside Israel for signing, just like Sadat. Yeah. So it's more complicated than it looks. And Trump likes to see things in a simple way, we know that. Melanie in Manchester, maybe this is a great day for Trump.
Maybe it is. I think we've got to give credit where credit's due here. I think we needed his... I'm not a Trump supporter, by the way, but I think we needed his, narcissistic, egocentric personality type to get the ball.
That's what I've been saying to Andy, but Andy doesn't accept that, because Andy says... Don't want to take you out of context, but Andy says basically Trump only does what's good for Trump. So if the stars align and something that's good for other people is good for them, that's fine, is good for him. But he's not driven by the right values. That's the problem with Donny.
Yes, and I've got to agree with that to a certain degree.
But then maybe it doesn't matter, like I've been saying to Andy.
I don't think it does.
No.
If it works, if it's done, then, thank
We've got to
heaven.
stop these
We've
kids
got a long
dying.
way to go.
Yeah.
I believe that what actually has happened is Benjamin Netanyahu, a fiercely intelligent man, without talking about his morals, has got his way and played Donald Trump in just the way Putin has been doing. Yeah, he's managed to effectively complete his war, get the hostages back, do what he wanted to do, completely wipe out Gaza. And now Donald Trump gets to say, "Oh, I've instigated a peace plan."
Yeah,
but
but
actually,
hang on, Gaza,
really isn't. It's capitulation
I think
of
it's
Hamas.
different.
I don't know.
I think it's different to Russia-Ukraine. I think you're right. Putin completely played Trump. Went all the way to Alaska, had this really huge high-level meeting, and it all fell through. Putin played Trump, partly because he wanted more land, right? He wasn't going to accept it.
But going back to it, so what has Netanyahu not got that he wanted?
Or he's having to sign something with Hamas.
With the terrorists
He's having to
that
treat them as
killed-
an entity.
Forget that. That's performance. What has he actually materially got that he wanted? Everything that he wanted. The hostages back. He's destroyed Gaza. He's destroyed Hamas.
Well,
And he gets to be the victim.
They
Melanie,
don't
what
want a
about
Palestinian
this?
state.
Melanie's listening to this. Andy's making the point that actually this is just basically Netanyahu putting a victory flag down on Gaza.
Well, I mean, maybe so. But going back to Trump, it still needed him to, I think, for us to believe and to get where we've got to. His personality has done this, and I think it is for his own benefit. But I don't think that's,
Doesn't matter.
relevant at the moment.
As Melanie says, that may not matter. And we saw. Thank you, Melanie, so much for calling. And we saw the map of Gaza showing the damage. 80% of buildings knocked down. You can see it. This is the scene pretty much everywhere.
Do we know if journalists are now allowed in?
Do you know, it's funny, I was hoping to see that in the 20-point plan. I wonder if that's going to, once you have this interim administration with, by the way, Tony Blair involved?
Yeah, I'm not happy about Tony Blair being involved. I mean, I think also a lot of people feel very betrayed about what happened in Iraq. And so to see Tony Blair sort of rewarded with this position potentially, I think is just not
I think
very
he's
nice.
respected by the statespeople he's going to have to meet to draw that together. And is that not more important that he's been working in the Middle East for decades now? And he's a trusted world,
Perhaps. Look, I mean, again, I
world-striding
don't like
politician.
the man, I don't like Trump, I don't like Blair, but if they are the people that can get things sorted, and actually, look, all that really matters here is that the starvation, the devastation, the completely horrific scenes that we've been seeing ends. That's what matters.
Apparently now, will the Nobel Peace Prize itself be announced in 10 minutes? Are we on the verge of that today?
I saw that there was rumbling about Trump. I think has already said that he should get it, and he's annoyed he probably won't.
Are we expecting the decision in 10 minutes? Do you know, I think we are.
Oh.
I think this is improbable, isn't it? But it could just happen. He's basically possibly going to be announced as the Nobel Peace Prize winner at 10 o'clock. If he's not, he'll call for the whole thing to be shut down.
That is absolutely true. I mean, I cannot imagine
sure.
the people who make the decision could stomach it. But he has put them in a very difficult position today
He's timed
ended
it
the war.
to perfection. Yeah, but then this is what the Nobel Peace
But it would
Prize is
make him-
for, guys. It's not. It's to incentivise this sort of meeting.
It is for this.
Yeah, he's not going to do it on Monday. He's doing it today.
It would make a mockery of
So-
the Peace Prize if he won it.
You
I
think so?
disagree.
Of course it would make
What
a
about
mockery.
Obama
Andy,
win it? What did
who else
Obama win it
deserves
for?
it?
Listen, if you look at what he's doing domestically, it's the opposite of peace.
It's
He's
not
behaving
about-
like
it's not
a
about the domestic
demagogue. Well,
politics,
it
Andy.
is
It's about-
actually,
it's
because we're
about
talking about a
international
prize.
conflict.
But Andy raises a good
We're
point.
talking about a prize for peace, and
He's
here
also
is a
convicted
guy
felon.
And he has just
deconstructing democracy,
negotiated
for
a
crying
peace
out
deal that
loud.
may save thousands, millions of Palestinian lives.
Yeah.
He's destroying
I
the
think-
world's most powerful democracy, and you give him a peace prize. Come on, wake up.
Well,
What
you
you
know what?
You think America had a great democracy before Trump came in?
Oh, well, I certainly think it's. I think it's pretty weak now. I think it's pretty weak now. You speak to
I
the
agree
people of
it's weak,
America
but look, this
who are
is
having
what-
their rights taken away
Okay,
from them.
all right. There are all kinds of angles, and we know about Trump's behaviour with women, and we know that he's a convicted felon, and we know he generated the energy behind the January the 6th insurrection. However, that may not matter.
Does
it
any
may
of
not
this matter in
It
the
may
war?
not. And if you're the Nobel Peace Prize, you're not looking at character. And by the way, the argument against you, Andy, is that Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize and still nobody knows what it was for. He got it basically for arriving in the White House.
For bombing Libya?
I don't know what it was for.
Well, arguably
Amanda in Cumbria, hello.
Hello.
So look,
Hi,
we may be, I don't know, it's possible in 7 minutes we hear he's won. If this goes to plan, what will you think if he wins it?
Well, I don't think much of him to begin with. I think he's just trying to get as many feathers in his cap as possible.
Yep.
He's said himself that he deserves the Nobel Prize. He put the idea in people's heads. That's why we're talking about it now.
Yep.
And he's just trying to get as much as he can while he's in power.
Do you think if the announcement is in 6 minutes, and I don't, we'll see. Do you think he will get it, Amanda? Yes or no? Predict.
Probably, but he doesn't deserve it.
Okay. Yes, no.
I think he does deserve it.
No, but yes or no? Will he get it? Predict.
Yes, he will get it.
Not a chance.
OK. Thanks, Amanda. Thank you for all your calls on this. I think he won't. I think there'll be some I think they will have decided a week ago, is the answer. Later, we'll be asking whether we need to ban mobile phones at the dinner table. The Princess of Wales has spoken out about families checking phones at meal time. But come on, we lead busier lives than the dear old royals. After the break, we'll debate whether metal detectors should be installed in all schools to fight knife crime. 0207 862 2222. See you in a moment. Wait, there's breaking news. I'm going to come back to the weekend. The winner of the Nobel Peace Prize has been announced in Norway, and it is not Trump. It's gone to a Venezuelan called Maria Corina Machado.
Good.
Can I just say a former intern?
He's gonna be furious. They don't know what they're doing. They're clueless.
Former intern at the IEA was arrested in Venezuela and is still under the Venezuelan regime, still being tortured for his support for Machado.
Okay.
So it is.
I'm so glad you've said that. So Machado is in the country, in Venezuela, or
the understanding is that she's in the embassy. We have no idea.
She's holed up.
She's in exile because effectively she won the presidency, and the current regime have basically said, nope, we're still in power.
Okay, it's really interesting this because, joking apart, Trump has been quite close to the leader of Venezuela. He's had him at the White House, and they've been kind of buddies. And so not only have you not given Trump the Peace Prize, you've given it to a sort of pro-democracy person on the doorstep of one of his allies.
Not just pro-democracy, pro-free markets, pro-individual liberty. I mean, look, these campaigns are so important.
Let's have a look. Can we see the winner then? Here she is. And she is going...
She deserves it.
So Andy was right. I thought also that he wouldn't get it because they're not deciding it this morning. It
would have been so discrediting. I mean, they couldn't have, even if it was awarded 6 months from now, it would have been so discrediting to give Donald Trump a Peace Prize. Honestly,
I think they'll give it to him next year.
But do people realise what is going on in Venezuela? I mean, this is, people are at mass scale. Thousands of people have been arrested for their political support for Machado.
Right.
It is what is happening in Venezuela is absolutely horrendous, and so she absolutely does deserve this.
All right. OK. Good. I'm so glad you gave us that insight. Thank you. Later on.